Welcome to April's Arizona Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee. And this is really our chance to celebrate our progress on the roadmap. So excited to have you here today. And we have a lot of guests and we have a packed agenda today. This is obviously presented by the Flynn Foundation, and thank you for being part of our Arizona Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee. So we hold this event really to gather the community, to share data, and to highlight important developments that we have that are driving the state forward. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Heather Carter. I am the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield Arizona Health Choice. That's the Medicaid segment within Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I am chair of the steering committee. So I am gratefully joined today by our vice chair, Dr. Jennifer Barton. And she is the director of the Bio5 Institute at the University of Arizona. So thank you, Tammy, as the CEO of the Flynn Foundation. We just really appreciate your leadership, not only with the foundation, but specifically in this bioscience space. And thank you to everyone on the webinar for joining us today. So I want to provide just a little bit of a background. We may have some new people on here today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Flynn Foundation, it is a privately endowed philanthropic grant-making organization. It was established 60 years ago by Dr. Robert and Irene Flynn. And the foundation's mission is to improve the quality of life in Arizona to benefit future generations. And it does this in a number of ways. It supports the arts and culture, provides a college scholarship program, provides support in the area of civic leadership, and then what we're here today to talk about the biosciences in Arizona. So, what is this bioscience roadmap that we keep referring to? Well, in 2002, the Flynn Foundation worked with leaders across the state and the Battelle Corporation to develop the initial roadmap. Seems like just yesterday, but it really was, 23 years ago. And during that first decade of the roadmap, Arizona invested in the biosciences in a significant way. So we were able to realize important infrastructure, and this was done in partnership with the universities. Our health systems grew rapidly. And then with that, right, the key anchor organizations were born for the biosciences in Arizona. But then fast forward to the second decade, the Flynn Foundation contracted with the TEConomy Partners, who we've heard a number of times in our meetings, to really continue monitoring progress on key metrics. So the roadmap really focuses on leveraging research strengths to build a critical mass of companies and promotes the translation of those discoveries and really encourages entrepreneurial growth. So today, you may not know this, but the roadmap is the longest running statewide bioscience strategic plan in the nation. And it is very distinctive. It's for consistently measuring performance and then reporting back to the community. So that's why we're here today, really. And in a few minutes, I'm going to share the latest data from TEConomy. So it's really exciting and something to be proud of in Arizona. So guiding this bioscience roadmap is the steering committee, and that convenes 125 of the state's leading research scientists, workforce experts, investors, company executives, university and government leaders, elected officials, and even more. So thank you to all of you who serve on this statewide steering committee, because it's really through your efforts that we are able to do this work. So a successful ecosystem, it really relies on action from the elected officials. And we are honored today to be joined by a number of them. And we have members of the Flynn Foundation Board. So if you are here joining us, if you just wouldn't mind, I can recognize them here on the slide as you see. We have our past steering committee chairs. And I can tell you this is just an absolute impressive group. I can remember when I first joined the steering committee, and seeing how far we've come to today is just a real testament to your continued leadership as a past steering committee chair for the roadmap. So thank you. Thank you very much. Also, I want to say that in today's presentation, I'm going to share the latest progress data, and then Dr. Tomas Dia de la Rubia from the University of Arizona Office of Research and Innovation will join us to discuss opportunities and challenges in bioscience research, commercialization, and healthcare. And then finally, we're going to hear from SRI International, which has been, immersed in Arizona's biosciences for the past 8 months. Many of you probably did a survey or an interview with them. And this has helped us develop the next iteration of the roadmap, which is a plan for our sector over the next 5 years. So in addition to presenting at this event, we want to highlight the Flynn Foundation's brochure. And each spring, we convene this brochure to highlight the year's progress. So the newest report is now available on the Flynn website. I encourage you to read it. I just reviewed it before this meeting, and it is absolutely impressive. And please share this far and wide. For those who don't serve on the committee, perhaps this is a resource that they can use to really understand what's happening in Arizona around the biosciences. So without any further ado, I'm going to dive in. Are you ready? We'll dive in. And obviously, if you have any questions, please put that in the chat. And what we're going to do is we'll save the questions to the end of the presentation of the data. We're going to run through the presentation first, and then we're going to engage in a Q&A before we move to the next section of our agenda. So just for context, what we're doing right now is reviewing the data from TEConomy. So here are the recognized bioscience subsectors. Now, the first 5 are tracked by the National Biotechnology Innovation Organization. But in Arizona, we've included hospitals in our definition, since they are such an important driver of research and innovation. So first up, probably, everybody's favorite topic is jobs. And our most recent information on this metric is for 2023 with jobs, and they're sitting at 144,000. Note, though, that the non-hospital jobs in Arizona is well balanced between 3 subsectors, with some smaller but significant pharma and bioag subsectors as well. So, in terms of bio jobs, Arizona versus the United States, the raw numbers are significant, but Arizona's growth specifically is exciting. And here's the growth, as you can see on the slide, of Arizona's bioscience jobs compared to the nation's bioscience jobs since the roadmap launched in 2002. So we have a good trajectory of data. And Arizona really breaks away from the nation as a whole almost immediately and has nearly doubled in the past 20 years. And now it's up 96%. So this is something we can be super proud of as a state. Then if we move into, Arizona versus the Arizona private sector, even more exciting, we know that across the board, Arizona is adding residents and corresponding jobs quickly. But bio jobs have grown much faster than the private sector as a whole. And since the roadmap launched, the total private sector has grown about by 50%. And that's impressive, especially considering the challenges of the Great Recession and the beginnings of COVID and so forth. But as we saw on the previous slide, employment in bio never dropped during these crises. And so for the non-hospital biosciences in particular, the increase has been even faster. This is something we should be very proud of, and many people don't know about our state. So now let's take a little bit more granular look at job growth since the roadmap launched. And it's true for the entire state. Bio job growth in each region has far outpaced the overall private sector. But this slide also reflects that bio is subject to underlying regional economic factors. So as probably you would imagine, Metro Phoenix has grown most rapidly amongst these regions. And that's true for both the bio jobs and the overall private sector. But it's something to be aware of as you look at our geographical distribution across the state. So then, when you look at regional concentrations of each subsector, a local quotient of 1.0 shows a concentration equal to the national average, with a local quotient of 1.2 or higher above. If it's higher than 1.0 to 1.2, it's recognized as specialized. So, as has been true for many years, we see a significant presence for medical devices across the state and a specialized local quotient in northern and southern Arizona, where hospitals also have a specialized concentration. So, bioscience related distribution is the subsector most highly concentrated, though, in Metro Phoenix. So, now that wasn't enough, we're going to move to wages. Now, we know that about job growth, that these kind of jobs, are they the jobs we want to add? And the short answer is absolutely. Because this slide shows us the number of things. First, the biosciences pay much better than the overall private sector. And second, the non-hospital bio jobs pay especially well. And while wages in Arizona trail the nation as a whole, our rate of wage growth since 2020 has been higher than the country. So we're catching up. And then if you move to the next slide, you're going to see where the subsectors, where Arizona is competitive on wages nationally, and then areas where we have a distance to go. And, taking a look at this, like really dive into this. Part of the story is that having a major hub for global companies really does make a difference. We don't have a huge number of those in Arizona. We'd like more. We're moving in that direction. But with more headquarters of large pharma, bio-ag companies, for instance, we would certainly see higher wages in these areas. So that's something to monitor as you look at companies moving to Arizona. So next, kind of changing gears, looking at the innovation ecosystem, we're going to talk about metrics related to research. And that research then drives innovation and ultimately the companies and employment we've been discussing. So comparing Arizona, the United States, and R&D research expenditure, in 2023, we saw an all-time high of research expenditures in the state universities at $812 million. Huge shout out to our research universities. This was a big jump from the year before. And then over this 4-year period, the growth rate of that in Arizona exceeded the national average. And this is really exciting to see. And then when you look at that same data broken out by institution and in the small type by categories set by the National Science Foundation, there's a lot to take in on this slide, but I'm going to point out 3 things specifically. First, the outsized contribution of U of A to our research enterprise, especially in the biomedical sciences and health sciences. And then second, the rapid growth of ASU and what that is showing in terms of our data here. And then notice, as a third point, in 2023, NAU was on the cusp of $50 million in bio R&D, and a major reason that is ahead of more than 700 universities nationwide. And this year received the coveted R1 designation. Huge, huge accomplishment. So we'll take a minute to celebrate that. And then if you look at NIH funding specifically, it's at an all-time high in the state, closing in on 1% of the NIH grants nationally in 2024. And this is a testament to the life-changing work being done every day at our institutions. And as you can see, Arizona's growth in NIH funding has far exceeded the national average as a whole. So diving in a little deeper here, the $368 million in NIH funding for 2024 is broken down by institution type. The distribution you see is similar to the national shares, where 72% of the funds go to university and 20% go to hospitals and other research institutions. as opposed to 8% to companies. That's why it's important to have this ecosystem and how our bioscience roadmap brings everyone together. So really closing out looking at our research, I just want to acknowledge the really uncertain, tumultuous situation with respect to federally supported R&D and, you know, the personal impact it's having on our sciences, our clinicians, our patients. And if you leave anything from this meeting, I want you to leave a little bit more aware of how significant Arizona's research enterprise has accelerated in recent years. And obviously, we have tremendous potential for the future, and it's so clearly evident. And I hope this gives you the information that you need, to be able to talk about this with not only people in the bioscience industry, but outside the bioscience industry. So then we're going to look really about how this tech transfer at the Arizona Public University, the data surrounding that and how it works. And as you can see, it's kind of a mixed bag. Licenses and options were down year over year, but then other measures showed growth. So we've had slight growth in startups from the university IP, and we see that almost half of the startups from the universities are in the biosciences, and that's an important metric for our roadmap. And then if you look at the next slide, really diving into venture capital dollars and deals, you'll see that Arizona was close to its all-time high in the bioscience VC investment in 2024. And we're tracking the national upward trend over the past couple of years. And following national patterns, we're continuing to see a decline, though, in the number of deals from the high point we saw in 2021. So the macro trends for investment are also evident in Arizona, and it's something that we'll want to monitor and continue to measure here as a roadmap. So now let's look at VC by stage. We have two more slides that are going to illustrate the extent to which Arizona aligns with the nation. On this slide, we see that Arizona kind of diverging from somewhat the national average in two respects. First, in terms of the overall dollars coming into the state, we're a bit heavier on later stage investment, and we've heard this, for a number of years here in the committee, but we've simultaneously had a larger share of the deals at the pre-seed and angel stages. So what this means is it suggests really, a strong potential as Arizona matures further. If our ecosystem can help our young companies continue to develop, we're going to see improvement in some of those early stage metrics. So then looking at it by segment, we see investments by subsector. And then Arizona looks rather different from the country. As a much smaller share for biopharma and a much larger shares for these other categories. We know we have a strong medical device sector, and that's to be celebrated. And there's something to watch in digital health too, where Arizona share is twice as high in the nation. So, really, in summary, where does Arizona stand in 2025? And as always, there is absolute room for improvement. But overall, we're in a promising position as this iteration of the roadmap reaches its endpoint and then launches the next iteration. So to conclude, I want to really acknowledge, the team at TEConomy for the outstanding work that they have done to keep us well informed. And we have a few minutes. We have about 10 minutes for question and answers. So I'm going to review the questions. And Jennifer, if you can help me moderate this, that would be great. Let's review the questions, see if we have any thing that is top of the mind there. And if not, we have a couple of topics we may want to discuss. So,
well, thank you so much, Heather, for that great
that was a
summary.
lot. That was a mouthful.
Yes, it's a lot of information, so much information that, unsurprisingly, one of our first questions was, this is great information. Thank you. Will you be sharing these slides? It would be great to be able to use these slides to amplify this message. And the answer from the Flynn Foundation is yes, they will be available on flynn.org/progress.
Absolutely.
So yes, anybody else, please feel free. We've got a couple of questions popping up. Becky Saylor has asked, how concerned are you about the funding the Trump administration is taking from our universities?
And I think it's fair to say that we are very concerned about the long-term sustainability of our university funding because we have seen, not only in the data that we just presented here, but consistently over the last few decades, how important it is for our universities to partner with the federal government to advance many research initiatives, and that is rooted in federal funding. It's not funded by the state. It's primarily funded by the federal government. And there are tools in our toolbox in the state that we can use, but without the full partnership from the federal government, we will absolutely see an impact. And I hope that some of the data that we showed today can show that investing in our universities not only improves the university's output, but improves the lives in Arizona. And I think that's really important to show how that funding has not just benefited the university, the researchers, the clinicians, the providers, but patients in Arizona as well. And so translating that funding into something that is actionable for taxpayers is really important. And I think that's our role as Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee members to really talk about that.
Thank you very much, Heather. Absolutely. I'd encourage everybody to make sure we get that message out. Next question. What funding is available in Arizona to support pre-revenue life sciences companies?
So the whole scope of venture capitalists and angel funding is one of our Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee goals, and so we have many meetings where we talk about that. In terms of specific answers, I will rely on our staff to put that in the chat. The challenge moving forward is depending on how the federal government partners to bring those research projects to the university, and then how you launch them from there as that tech transfer process is going to be something that this committee is really going to have to roll up their sleeves and look at and explore as we enter this new environment of financial pressures. But
Yes, yes. And there was a follow-up on that question with particularly for commercialization efforts, which are often not allowable expenses on federal grants. So,
right, and then there have been many conversations even at the state level, and then you get into the state issue related to a constitutional prohibition around a gift clause. So this really is the private sector coming together in Arizona, and I think based upon our history of the roadmap, the work that we have done in this roadmap and the network that we have created has enabled us to address this in ways that wouldn't exist without the roadmap. Do we still have additional work to do? Absolutely.
yes. All right. Next question from Eric Miller. Any efforts to address the low ratio of university IP licenses issued to number of patents?
This is interesting when you dive into the tech transfer space, and full disclosure, I was very involved with it in my legislative days, less involved as the CEO of a Medicaid plan. I know there is heightened awareness around this, and this is really what is the fuel for that next gen of business and commercializations. In terms of specifics, I'm going to ask our committee to see if they can add anything in the chat or follow up on this. It is a pain point. I would be remiss if I didn't say it was a pain point. And maybe that's something we can put forth to really solution at one of our committee meetings to dive into that because it's one of our goals as a bioscience roadmap steering committee. It's one of our goals.
Excellent, excellent. And of course, we'd love to get steering committee members and anyone involved in these efforts and contributing. So thank you. Okay, Donald Monroe is asking, I'm curious about the role private equity may play in this sector in Arizona. Is that something you are tracking?
So that is an absolute, really interesting question, because when you talk about tracking private equity, there's no public source to track necessarily private equity, depending on how that rolls out. So when we hear about it, obviously we will celebrate that as a steering committee, but we are really limited by a data source to track that.
Mhm.
It is an important role. I think I could speak for the committee in saying it's absolutely an important role. It's just very difficult to track. Very difficult to track.
Okay, so a specific question, Jim Howard is asking, is Arizona going after Roche and their promise to invest 50 billion in the US?
Well, and I have to give a shout out to the comment before that from Dr. Crockover, my good friend Mitzi. You're right. I'm glad you mentioned the bioscience research specifically in women's health. Something that we should pay a great deal of attention to. In terms of the way Arizona competes for companies, it is a very comprehensive, laborious process that involves the Commerce Authority, local municipalities, and their economic development. And I will just speak from my previous days. A lot of this is very confidential and very under wraps. So, Jim, you have called it out here in front of 190 of one of our favorite friends in this space. I'm not sure if anybody will answer that, but if nothing more, you've at least highlighted it to 191 leaders across the state of Arizona. And I will ask the staff of the Flynn Foundation to just ping the Arizona Commerce Authority and say it was mentioned in our chat. But
That's
Jim, I
great.
can't answer the question because it's probably private.
Perfect. So next question, and this may be our last given our time, but please note that we are paying attention to all these questions and we will get to them all and make sure we get answers back. The next one, with this data, might some of the economic development entities who were successful at the TSMC recruitment endeavor to be prompted to focus on the biosciences?
Well, and Eve, I appreciate that. I appreciate that question. What is fascinating to watch is my economic development colleagues navigate the vast opportunities for recruitment to Arizona and the important partnership that they play with the state, your local municipality, and partners in the particular community, like in North Phoenix with TSMC. Whether or not that particular area pivots and includes biosciences will be something that group that is recruiting in that area will have to look for. The good news is the infrastructure brought to the community through TSMC is absolutely remarkable and will give an incredible foundation for all of those high-tech areas to partner and coexist in the same space. This roadmap committee will be committed to biosciences specifically.
Perfect, perfect. Well, as we finish up, I just want to note that uh, let's see,
I know
regarding
I've
Eric.
got one personal question to me. Aniko, yes, reach out. You know, what's interesting is in my new role, relatively new role, approaching a year, is that there's a real opportunity for public-private partnerships to work together. And so that's what this roadmap steering committee, I think it gives us an opportunity to connect with people that we wouldn't necessarily connect with otherwise. So absolutely. There's absolutely opportunity to connect and talk about how these ideas can really bring partners together. Sorry, I answered a question that was to me there.
Yeah, your prerogative. That's right.
I know.
And what we love about the steering committee is that we bring people together. That's one of our major functions,
Right.
is to make those connections and to facilitate. So perfect. So thank you so much. I think we need to move on to our next segment now. So Heather, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. I'll do the introduction and my colleague will finish out the remainder of the meeting. So we are pleased to recognize, welcome one of Arizona's newest scientific leaders. So Dr. Tomas Diaz de la Rubia, Vice President for Research and Innovation at the University of Arizona. I'm going to ask you to share your slides, and your video will come on in audio while I give you your introduction. So Dr. Diaz de la Rubia's distinguished career spans national labs, academia, and the private sector, including leadership roles at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Deloitte, Purdue University, the University of Oklahoma, and at Oklahoma, you spearheaded a transformative research strategy that really significantly boosted the research output and industry partnerships, especially in aerospace, energy, health, AI, and machine learning, and quantum technologies. So I just want to thank you for joining this event, and we really look forward to hearing about what's happening at the University of Arizona in the biosciences and the new directions that the president is setting and what it all means for Arizona's broader biosciences. So please put your questions in the chat, and either Jennifer or myself will be moderating as the time allows. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you for that warm introduction and that welcome. I'm delighted to be here in Arizona. It's been a fantastic 5 months or so, drinking from the fire hose, but it's a great fire hose. I've been learning a lot about the state and also, of course, about the university, which is truly an inspirational place, really one of the truly remarkable American research universities, one of the leaders in the world in so many different fields. So yes, I'm delighted to be here today and to give you a little bit of an overview of where the university is going, what the president's new initiatives are about, and also a little bit about what kind of work are we doing in the biosciences. So let me share my slides here and see how that goes. Let's see. Let me go do this. Continue to share. How is that? Everybody see this?
Looks great. Perfect.
Okay, very good. Sorry, trying to see how are we doing this. Okay, there we go. Let me move this out of the way. So, as you know, the University of Arizona is leading the way in researching in many different critical areas that really matter to society. I mean, our motto is transdisciplinary research with impact on society. And these areas that I have listed here, they really reflect our land-grant mission as Arizona's land-grant university. The future of health and the biomedical sciences, data, information systems, and artificial intelligence. You cannot educate the leaders of the future, the citizens of the future, if you don't have a very strong data, information science, artificial intelligence, research, and educational enterprise. We integrate into all of this a human experience, right? It's not just about STEM, it's about, as I said, convergence, transdisciplinary convergence. How does the research that we do impact society? How do we bring the human dimension into everything that we do? One of the largest industries in Arizona, of course, is mining. So energy, mining, and environmental sustainability are another vertical for us that is critical. And as you will see in a little bit, national security and space sciences are truly integral to our strategy for the future. We feel very strongly that as a public university in the state of Arizona, we have a mission and as a land-grant university to really help our warfighters be ready for whatever comes to us so that we can best protect our freedoms and liberties that we're accustomed to against adversaries in the future. So the University of Arizona is, as I said at the beginning, is truly inspiring. I'm still in awe after all these months, and I know I will be for years to come. We're among the top 4% of all universities in the country when it comes to research and development. We're $1 billion plus annual research enterprise. That's a very, very select club. The state of Arizona can be extraordinarily proud of the fact that we are one of the very few states that have $2 billion plus comprehensive research universities, Arizona State and the University of Arizona. That's truly remarkable. Two American Association of Universities, Carnegie R1, $1 billion plus research universities. That's an incredible engine of innovation, of economic progress for the state, and something that I think is really unique, not truly only unique, but in very few states that can make that claim. We're among the top 20 public universities nationwide. We're number 2 in astronomy and astrophysics, in water, among the highest NASA-funded universities in the country, among the top in the physical sciences. Truly an engine of discovery, an engine of translation, an engine of economic progress for the state, for the nation, and for the world. Now, when President Garimella and I started, I came to the university about a month after he arrived. He and I had worked together at Purdue University for a number of years. He had hired me there back in 2014 and worked together there for about 5 years. And when he started here and he called me up, he said, "Hey, there's an opening for a senior vice president for research. Are you interested?" And so I applied for the position. I went through all the interviews and everything else. And he and I started talking about what might be some strategic research initiatives that build on our strengths and position the University of Arizona and the state of Arizona to be leaders of the future in critical areas of innovation and technology. And so we settled on 4 areas, which we discussed with Arizona Board of Regents. They have been extraordinarily supportive of these ideas. And we look at, as I said before, at the whole issue of artificial intelligence. How does AI impact society today, and more importantly, in the future? And as we looked at that, we decided that given our medical research enterprise, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes in a little bit more detail, given our biosciences and medical research enterprise, focusing artificial intelligence on the future of health was the right approach for the university. We have 2 medical schools, as you know. We have a big NIH-funded research enterprise in the biosciences, in the biomedical research, and AI is transforming health today. AI is having a massive impact on the field of health research and health delivery, all the way from the Nobel Prize being given to scientists at Google this year for being able to predictively fold proteins, the precursor to understanding how to develop new drugs for the market using artificial intelligence, to clinical trials, optimization, to patient care, to personalized genomics, all across the board. Artificial intelligence is having and will have a massive impact on the future of health. So we want to be leaders in driving that transformation for the future. Now, we also look at the question of energy. Energy is, of course, energy security is key for Arizona, is key for the nation, and is key for the world. If you look at the world today, there's about 1.2 billion people around the planet who are still living in energy poverty. If you look at Arizona, we have water shortages. We have lots of companies that want to build data centers in Arizona. We have TSMC, as you discussed before, coming here. There is tremendous economic development opportunities, and energy is key to that. So when we look at that, we decided that the way to approach the question of the future of energy was to focus on something really, really transformative, the promise of fusion energy. And we did that not because it's easy, we did it because it's hard. We did it because it's difficult, it's the challenge worthy of a university like the University of Arizona. And we did it because truly, if we're able to take the scientific discoveries of the last few years in fusion and in fusion research and translate those into electrons on the grid through commercialization of fusion energy, which really will help transform the planet from a world of energy scarcity to a world of energy abundance. And so this is our focus when it comes to energy. There was an op-ed on thehill.com that President Garimella and myself authored in the last few days. It came out on Monday, actually. And I encourage you to go and find it on thehill.com. I think it's a call for the nation to really double down on helping create public-private partnerships that bring fusion to commercial reality. And I have no doubt that if we're successful in pushing this forward, Arizona could be the state where fusion happens first. That's our goal. Now, as I said before, mining is a critical industry to the state of Arizona, and for sure, critical minerals in the current geopolitical environment become ever more important. Arizona has a huge role to play when it comes to the supply, not just the mining, but the processing of critical minerals here in the United States, bringing that supply chain that is so critical to everything from MRIs to semiconductors to national security, bringing that supply chain back here to the United States and away from China. And then ultimately, finally, and very importantly, we look at the question of space and national security. If you look today at the geopolitical environment, and if you look today and you think about where is the battle going to start when it does, not if it does, but when it does, it's going to start in space. Space is a highly contested domain of warfare today. The space is where all our critical assets and infrastructure resides, all our communications, everything that we do today as a modern society resides in space, starts in space and comes down to Earth from space. We have to be able to defend and protect our space assets against the adversary. And so the University of Arizona, as you know, as I said before, we're number 2 in astronomy, we're number 7 in the physical sciences. We have for decades been among the leaders in the country, in the world, when it comes to space science, when it comes to astronomy, when it comes to telescopes and optical materials, and when it comes to flying satellites and missions to asteroids and bringing samples from asteroids back to Earth. We really are truly one of the top universities in the world. And so marrying our space science and technology expertise with the national security imperative is the fourth of our strategic research initiatives. What you're going to see going forward is that the university is going to double down on all of this, and we're really going to put a lot of effort into ensuring that we are global leaders and Arizona leaders when it comes to these critical areas for the future. Now, at the same time, as I mentioned before, we have a tremendous biosciences ecosystem, a powerful network of interdisciplinary collaborations, educational and training programs, specialized facilities, and transformative partnerships. We have a health sciences campus with 2 accredited colleges of medicine, one in Tucson and one in Phoenix. Tomorrow, I'm going to spend my day at the College of Medicine in Phoenix. We're part of the Phoenix Biosciences Core. We have the Bio5 Institute with Jennifer Bardon, our host, leads very aptly, which is having tremendous impact on so many fields in so many areas, from medical imaging to medical devices to training of the next generation. Really, truly an inspirational institute of convergence of many disciplines towards the health sciences. And we're partnered with Banner, the Banner Clinical Research Medical System, which is really important to us, and a very, very strong relationship with Banner University Health. And of course, we are the site of the only NCI-designated comprehensive cancer center in the state of Arizona. And so all of this gives us really an ecosystem from which we can drive innovation in the biosciences and new discoveries, translation of those discoveries to the bedside to make to save lives and make the life of Arizonans better across the board. Just to give you an idea of the numbers, we do about $170.5 million of NIH research funding every year. You know, I told you we're about $1 billion universities. It's about 17%, almost 20% of our entire research enterprise is NIH. In fact, if you look at health and human services overall, Veterans Administration, the CDC, ARPA-H, et cetera, is more like 23% of our total research portfolio is in the biomedical sciences. We rank number 10 in pharmacy, number 23 in nursing, number 37 in public health. And among medical schools, our NIH-funded research puts us in the number 57 position, something that we want to, of course, see get stronger and stronger as time goes by. Now, let me give you a couple of examples, and then I'll talk a little bit about you know, the startup ecosystem and how we work with the Flynn Foundation, which is so important to us. This is an example of how scientists in immunotherapies and really trying to use the immune system to fight cancer. It is the science of the future. Our researchers are uncovering how immune cells target, in this particular case, skin cancer, and identifying new ways to supercharge the body's natural defenses to stop that cancer from spreading. We're also making tremendous advances in cancer screening technologies, developing more accurate, comfortable, for example, breast cancer screening methods using 3D imaging, and potentially improving early detection and outcomes, especially in women with dense tissue. Here is also where artificial intelligence and machine learning are playing a tremendous role already today in medical diagnostics, helping us better understand imaging of cancer and other diseases using learning methods and machine learning algorithms. We're also working, of course, on cardiac arrhythmias, finding new therapeutic targets. I picked this example because I have an 88-year-old mother who is very healthy, except that she has atrial fibrillation. And every time she has atrial fibrillation episodes, her health declines for days. And it's terrible to see. And there's nothing, I mean, the medications are great, but we need to discover new ways of regulating heart ion channels and new targets for treating these kinds of diseases, which lead to heart failure and death of so many people. So that's another inspiring area where the University of Arizona is leading the charge in trying to find new solutions to save lives. As I mentioned before, artificial intelligence is important to the future. We are deeply, deeply embedded already in that area. We're building on tremendous strengths that we already have. I'll tell you that just a couple of days ago, just yesterday, we announced officially that we have hired the inaugural Chief AI and Data Officer for the University of Arizona, Professor David Ebert, who I first met at Purdue University. He worked with me at the University of Oklahoma for a number of years, and now we were lucky enough to be able to recruit him to join the university. And he's just a tremendous experienced data scientist that has run some very large centers of excellence across many, many areas. He's very involved in artificial intelligence and the future of health. And he is really going to help us elevate our game in this space. But, we're already doing tremendous amounts of work. In this case, identifying drug targets for Alzheimer's cures, trying to use AI to trace the path from a healthy brain to one afflicted by Alzheimer's disease, and also in Parkinson's, promising new drugs to treat Parkinson's dementia, and identifying compounds that could slow or stop cognitive decline in Parkinson's disease, which, as you all know, is such a devastating disease for so many people all around the world. The Flynn Foundation, of course, fuels our research across critical biosciences fields. We have a tremendous partnership with the Flynn Foundation. We're very competitive on the seed grant program. We love participating and competing for that. Our teams, we have 7 teams in 2025 that have been empowered by the foundation to drive breakthroughs in cancer and Parkinson's treatments, personalized medicine, predictive diagnostics, AI-driven healthcare. Just to give you an idea, these are some of the research projects that have been awarded by the Flynn Foundation this year, coupling AI again to green light therapy, developing portable devices to treat chronic pain using photoneuromodulation with personalized medicine, development of wearable carpal arc space augmentation devices to treat CTS, and molecular approaches for oropharyngeal cancer, accurate due date predictors for pregnancy, diagnostics for immunomodulatory therapies in inflammatory and fibrotic diseases, etc. These are projects that, again, can only happen and can only grow and turn into additional funding from the National Institutes of Health and the Health and Human Services Department through these kinds of seed grants that the Flynn Foundation provides to us. But at the end of the day, it's not all about discovery. It is really about translation, right? Impact on society. Innovation, I always say, innovation does not happen at universities. Discovery happens at universities. Technology development, early stage discoveries, early stage technology developments happen at universities. Innovation happens when partnerships take place between the private sector, between foundations, between universities, to take the discoveries at universities and translate them into products, translate them into solutions that impact people and society in positive ways. So our research translation ecosystem is geared towards those partnerships. It's gears towards creating impact from University of Arizona discoveries to support the creation of faculty, staff, and student startup companies, to engage University of Arizona innovators, to advance inventions for the lab to the marketplace, and really to protect our licenses and patents from others. So, so that's Tech Launch Arizona. That's the environment in which we work with faculty to disclose inventions, to patent inventions, to create startups, to license technology to the private sector, and to move forward that innovation. Now, we also have the University of Arizona Center for Innovation, which is an incubator. It really is what it is. There's 55 startup companies that go through a whole so-called 28-point roadmap to learn how to go from very, very early stage to build a business, to help them secure investments, to help them secure management talent, businesses that want to partner with them, eventually that may be able to have exits into those companies. So that's our incubator, is the UA Center for Innovation at the University of Arizona Technology Park, which is also where companies then, not just the startups, but private sector companies, established companies, are connected with the University of Arizona. We drive about $2 billion in annual economic impact through Tech Parks Arizona and support tremendous number of university industry relationships that way. So this ecosystem helps us, as I said, translate these discoveries that we create in the laboratory, these new drug targets, these new medical diagnostics into innovations that impact patients and society. We have, just to give you a sense of the impact of Tech Launch Arizona, we have created 145 plus startups since the creation of Tech Launch in 2012. So it's about 12 startups a year coming out from University of Arizona faculty, students, and staff IP. We've got about a $1.6 billion in economic impact in the region, and expected to be about almost $5 billion by 2031. We've helped these companies raise over $800 million in venture capital and other sources of funding through SBIRs and STTRs and other sources since fiscal 2016. And we've supported about 2,500 jobs in the community, which is, again, projected to grow to about 3,500 by 2031. Now, we have startups that then work with the Flynn Foundation to get into the Flynn Bioscience Entrepreneurship Program, again, with tremendous support from the foundation. In 2024, 2 companies founded by University of Arizona researchers, Medfora and Precision Epigenomics, were chosen by the Flynn Foundation competitive program. This really makes a huge difference for our faculty, for our students, for our staff, to be able to access sort of early stage seed capital to get these companies out into the market, to get them ready for Series A venture capital investment, for angel investment, and for future investment by others. So that's a very quick tour of the University of Arizona, where we're at today, our priorities going forward into the future, and how the biosciences ecosystem at the university is operating and where we want to go. So, you know where to find us. Always happy to connect with everybody across the state, with foundations, with the private sector, to partner with, as we do with our other universities in the state and with the community overall. So thank you so much for your attention on this.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Diaz de la Rubia. We have one question in the chat. Others, please feel free to add some questions. We have a couple minutes here. Not a surprising question. Mitzi Krovaker asks, what do you predict and how have you considered reacting to potential significant federal funding cuts to research and other support?
Let's see, I don't have a crystal ball, so it's hard to predict. What I can tell you is that I'm heading out to Capitol Hill next week. I have meetings all across our delegation. We're advocating strongly for the U.S. Congress to sustain the level of investment and continue to grow the level of investment in the federal agencies in academic, fundamental, and applied research. In the past, if the past is a predictor of the future, which, I hope it is, in the past, Congress has been always very welcoming of the message from academia that we need to sustain our federal research enterprise. It is key to the economic prosperity of the nation. It has been for 7 or 8 decades. That's the message that we bring to Capitol Hill. We know what the passback is for NIH and for HHS. We know what the passback is for NASA. We know what the discussions are on, research recovery rates for our costs of operating our research facilities. We understand all of that. At the end of the day, Congress responds to its constituents. Congress represents all of us on Capitol Hill. They have the power of the purse. So my message is with Congress. I'm talking to our representatives, to our senators, so it's the president, and really advocating for and demonstrating the power of the research and the impact of the research on society, on our economy, on our national security. What I ask for, however, is the following. And for those of you who are in the private sector here, we need to hear your voice. Congress needs to hear your voice on the importance of the federal government sustaining and growing the academic, fundamental, and applied research enterprise in the biosciences and across the board. We academics say this all the time. We're great. We do fantastic. I mean, you heard me today, right? I went on for 25 minutes about how fabulous we are. Okay, that message is not being heard in Congress. It's not being heard across the board. The message today is, well, now wait a minute, the private sector is doing $650, $700 billion a year of research. Why do we need to put so much money into federal research? Okay, that's the question at work today. If we don't hear from the private sector voice saying it is that fundamental and applied research in academia that leads to the discoveries, that lead to the innovation, that make those private sector companies successful in time, right? That create the wealth, right, through the private sector, right? If we don't hear that voice, I am really concerned that our voice in academia is an echo chamber, right? That is not being heard outside the echo chamber. So I'm asking for that help. I'm talking to the president and CEO of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness in Washington, D.C. about this. I'm encouraging her to write about this in Forbes magazine, where she has a column. I'm talking to other CEOs about this. I think we need to hear that voice, not just academic voice, right? Not just the voice from universities and university associations, which are doing great being out there. I love that Harvard is out there in front. That's great. They can do it. But we need the voice from the private sector.
Thank you for that. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the Flynn Roadmap Steering Committee is that we represent all sectors and that we work together. We understand we are an ecosystem, and we have opportunities to explain how critical the other aspects of the ecosystem are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, we're at 1 o'clock, so I know you have other things to do, and
I know,
we need to move on to the next segment. So thank you so much for your
Great to be
engagement.
with all of you. Thank you.
And we do have a couple of other questions that hopefully we can, get together and answer for people later on. So thank you. All right. Well, now we move on to our final segment. So next up, we have colleagues from SRI International who've been hard at work, engaging with many of you towards developing the next iteration of the Arizona's Biosciences Roadmap. This is exciting. So this is our next 10-year plan. So we've seen the past data, we've heard from Dr. Diaz de la Rubia about opportunities for the future, and now we're hearing about the plan for the next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing this, and I'm sure you are too. We have with us today Christy McFarland and Dylan Solden of SRI's Center for Innovation Strategy and Policy. Please share your slides, video and audio to the audience. Please put your questions or comments in the chat box, which SRI will be using throughout the presentation. So thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Christy and Dylan.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We're so excited to be here to share some insights from our latest work on the roadmap, including updated findings, trends, and a preview of the next phase. You can go ahead and get to the next slide, Dylan. I know we'll get through these quickly. So our agenda today will begin with an overview of SRI and this engagement, and then move into key findings and wrap up with a sneak peek of the new strategic roadmap. Just a little bit about SRI. Some of you may know and have worked with SRI in the past, others may not. We're a nonprofit R&D institute with over 1,600 staff, 13,000 patents, and 50 plus spin-off companies. We've been partnering with government and industry globally for about 80 years to tackle challenges through cutting-edge research in our labs in AI, robotics, biosciences, and much more. Our Center for Innovation Strategy and Policy, CISP, which is where Dylan and I sit, leads engagements like this one for the roadmap, helping states and regions align technology, innovation, and workforce to drive impact. CISP also complements and engages SRI's R&D capabilities for many of our projects. For example, for the roadmap, we're also drawing expertise from our commercialization teams as well as Biosciences Lab at SRI. Just want to give a little bit more insight into SRI's biosciences capabilities. Our Biosciences Lab is working on everything from sleep studies and biosensing to precision medicine platforms. Our work spans basic science to commercialization, including drug development, medical devices, diagnostics, and more. We've helped advance 225 drugs to clinical trials and 25 new drugs to market. So this is all just to give you some background about who we are and our position within the Arizona Bioscience Roadmap as we work with Flynn and so many of you throughout the state to make this a reality for this year. Okay. So next we're going to give, I'll give a little bit of a project overview and a context for the bioscience sector overall. Since last summer, SRI has been hard at work gathering and analyzing data, engaging players in all aspects of the ecosystem to gain a solid understanding of the state's strength, the state's growth areas, strengths, opportunities, and weaknesses. We've been benchmarking Arizona's bioscience ecosystem against that of peer states and regions to not only deep dive on Arizona's strategic position, but also to learn about how and why those places are successful and what could be translated for Arizona's unique context. We're now pulling all this information together to develop deep insights for our next stage, which is the development of actionable strategies to advance Arizona's bioscience ecosystem. Turning to our engagement, we, as many of you know, because you've been involved, our engagement strategy provided a 360 view of the ecosystem, including extensive one-on-one interviews with higher education, economic development, and bioscience industry leaders in Arizona and others. We held focus groups throughout the state, namely Flagstaff, Tucson, and Phoenix, to glean varying regional perspectives, and engaged with leaders from benchmarking states and SRI Bioscience division leaders to provide additional context about the national and global bioscience landscape, emerging trends, and where Arizona fits in. And then, of course, we had the survey, which was referenced earlier. I know many of you participated, so thank you. As we define Arizona's bioscience sector, for the current roadmap, we adopted a sector definition consistent with what has been used previously. And I think as we consider particularly how we're tracking and measuring success for bioscience sector within the state, that's going to be particularly helpful. I'll also note that this definition in particular captures sort of the full life cycle and value chain of bioscience activity in the state. So it is it's a very sort of broad view of bioscience, but captures all the activities that are occurring within the state. Turning now, before we jump into the findings, we wanted to set the stage a little bit with a brief review of some of the big picture forces shaping the biosciences today. So here, I'll discuss briefly bioscience trends, sort of macro level trends. We're seeing healthcare models evolve quickly, both virtual and hybrid, with a focus on outcomes. This is changing not just how care is delivered, but who delivers it and where. At the same time, we know that big tech is expanding its presence into healthcare, bringing new tools, new data, as well as some new competition. There's also, which we just spoke about recently, there's a lot of uncertainty around federal funding, particularly for bioscience and STEM research. That's creating headwinds and uncertainty both for research institutions as well as early stage companies. The regulatory landscape we know is shifting as well, with longer anticipated FDA timelines, making it tougher for startups to enter the market, especially in high-risk areas like biotech. With that as well, we're seeing an increasingly aging population driving up healthcare demand, as well as some pressures to strengthen the domestic biomanufacturing supply chain. These trends present challenges for Arizona, but also present real opportunities for Arizona to lead, and we'll discuss those in a bit. Turning now to scientific trends. Bioscience overall, as a science, is evolving very quickly. And we heard about this previously as well. Many of these changes are powered by technology such as AI, digital tools, and automation. We're seeing major advances in personalized medicine, as well as growing interest in fields like genomics and proteomics that offer a deeper view of health. GLP-1s are reshaping chronic disease treatment, and while gene therapy is still costly, it holds huge promise. Wearables are transforming real-time health monitoring, and synthetic biology is driving next generation biomanufacturing. With climate-linked health challenges, we're also seeing green bioengineering gaining some traction as well. So although these trends are global, in Arizona, we feel is well positioned to engage, especially with its strengths in AI, diagnostics, and cross-sector innovation. So we know those are sort of big stage-setting trends, but just important to keep in mind. I think there are some common themes there that have already run through several of the presentations today. So with that background, I will hand it off to Dylan to provide a deep dive on our findings to date. Dylan?
Thank you, Christy, and good afternoon, everyone. As a starting point, we wanted to acknowledge some of the quantitative metrics tracked in our ecosystem assessment that helped inform some of the findings and some of the slides that we'll share in a little bit. Just want to note some of these metrics do mirror the metrics from the TEConomy slides from earlier. So what I'm about to say is not a surprise, but across these indicators, Arizona does show strong and nationally competitive growth over the last 5 years. I know the slides earlier were between the last 3 and 4 years. But despite this, there's still a lot of work to do to work our way up into the top 10 or top 15 of bioscience states across measures. So we'll share a little bit more detail about that when we get to benchmarking. Here's a word cloud showing the most prevalent answers to the question, what words would you use to describe Arizona's bioscience ecosystem from our statewide survey? It shows all words that had at least 3 entries. Sentiment here revealed a clear focus on growth, innovation, collaboration, while also acknowledging the difficulties posed by underfunding and disorganization. Interestingly, no single institution or entity received more than 1 comment, suggesting that Arizona's ecosystem is a collective made up of many leaders and doers across sectors and organizations that help drive progress. These words are really helpful for us as we develop the vision for Arizona's bioscience ecosystem in this next iteration. It helps us think about the core characteristics that you all associate Arizona's bioscience ecosystem with, and how we want to be described in the future. This slide lists our identified existing and emerging research specializations based on ecosystem assets and activities. Topics were formed based on Arizona's research activity as we comb through NIH projects, SBIR, STTR awards, and publication topics to help situate activity in these existing and emerging categories. Generally, existing categories demonstrated either a large amount of activity or high specialization metrics, and emerging categories demonstrated high growth and an above average specialization. After about 20 years of growth and investment, you'll see several important research areas where Arizona today is conducting novel research and making an impact. We always talk about it with Flynn, but it feels like every other week there's a major announcement coming out of Arizona research. In our statewide survey, we also asked respondents to identify their top 3 specific research or technology areas that Arizona should prioritize to enhance global competitiveness. Here's a weighted count of the responses, which nicely align with several of the identified existing and emerging research specializations discussed in the last slide. For example, the ecosystem's interest in prioritizing AI and data science pairs nicely with existing strengths in biomedical informatics, precision medicine, and the omics, and more. Some respondents gave more ecosystem level priorities, which we tabulated and wanted to share with you all. Funding, of course, healthcare, mainly thinking about access, cost, quality, and lab infrastructure came through as the top 3 there. Next, let's talk about a big topic, the talent pipeline. We've estimated over 25,000 bioscience-related post-secondary program completions in 2023. This large number includes non-degree awards up through PhD awards, which lands 12th among US states. This is a wide selection that tries to encompass the entire bioscience definition, so roles across biological, engineering, technician, medical education programs, and more. Not only is the pipeline large, it is growing at an extremely fast pace. So in the last 5 years, completions have grown 9% compared to a 1% decrease nationally. This is a big strength. But the ecosystem does face some challenges. So first, thinking about talent demand versus talent supply, we tracked several prominent bioscience roles where unique job postings surged and heavily surpassed hires. We acknowledge that this is not a perfect approach to measuring labor shortages, especially if you're thinking about roles with lower barriers to entry based on education or experience where there's a lot of turnover. But here we tracked high imbalances in several roles that do require education requirements or experience, like health, MRI, cardio, surgical technicians, roles that require graduate medical education like physicians, cardiologists, surgeons, and roles like mechanical and industrial engineers. We also looked at graduate retention. We tracked over 2.7 million job profiles from graduates of Arizona institutions. We looked at engineering programs, biological and biomedical programs, and medical residency programs, and compared retention rates to other states. Again, we note that this is not a perfect method for calculating graduate retention, but it does at least provide us with some comparability between Arizona and how other states stack up. And unfortunately, a challenge here across all 3 broad program types that I mentioned, Arizona's retention trails that of California, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, and Washington. One just note is that Arizona's number of graduates is significantly larger than every state I just mentioned except for California. So that, again, might have a role in slightly lower retention. Next, I wanted to give another example of our workforce analysis and how we used bioscience job postings to get a pulse on industry needs. So we analyzed thousands of bioscience job postings to think about in-demand skills across 2 large, broad sets of jobs. One being lab and discovery jobs, the other being biomanufacturing jobs. We then mapped those key skills identified across those groups to the curricula of 22 Arizona education programs. These programs ranged from community college certificates and associate's degrees to university bachelor's and master's programs to try to see if there were any gaps. As the blue bar suggests, overall, we found strong alignment between educational curricula and those top in-demand skills. The lab and discovery programs mapped covered important skills like test handling and problem solving. Our biomanufacturing programs covered important in-demand and emerging computer skills, data analysis skills. There were some gaps in traditional manufacturing skills like your CNC programming or hand and power tools. The most important gap here, though, that relevant for both sets of jobs is the skill of an understanding of regulatory compliance and quality assurance and quality control as sort of top demanded skills that were not commonly covered in the sample of programs that we mapped. Our survey data and stakeholder engagement corroborated this finding, but these methods also cited business acumen for bioresearchers and health practitioners as a gap. Next, I wanted to share a little bit about our benchmarking work. As Christy talked about at the beginning, our goal here was to compare Arizona's bioscience ecosystem with peer and aspirational regions to identify competitive advantages for Arizona, and think about learning lessons and translatable programs that could be used here. After a rigorous screening process, we landed on Washington, Utah, Colorado as comparable regions or more comparably sized regions, and San Diego and North Carolina as aspirational benchmarks. Just a warning, the next slide is not the most eye-friendly, but it demonstrates an important point. So this slide shows aggregate rankings for some metrics collected by Bio in 2024 by state, except for San Diego, which we've collected using a similar methodology. You'll see that in aggregate, Arizona, which is the top bar here, is trailing both aspirational and comparable benchmarks. We're ahead of Utah in a few things, and we also best Washington and San Diego with total number of firms. The key point is that there's more work to do here to increase our competitiveness across these indicators, despite the immense growth. I told you I'd give a little more detail about that now. The rankings here, it's hard to understand the drastic difference in aggregate output. So I just wanted to share that here. So first, for Washington's R&D funding, where they're at 15 and we're at 24, their output nearly doubles Arizona's. Utah, which is at 17 for VC funding, and we're at 23 for funding, is 2.5 times greater than Arizona's VC funding. Then for Colorado with NIH funding, Colorado's at 20, we're at 25. And that NIH funding is 1.5 times greater than Arizona's. So there's these stark differences that we want to continue to try to close the gap in. Ultimately, we developed case studies for each region, which included significant desk research and interviews with leaders from those regions to learn a little bit more about the secret sauce that drives their growth and success. Here are some of those core themes that we've identified across benchmarks and examples of some of the policies and programs and actions we've tracked. These include state investment funds with a bioscience focus, participation in existing funding networks that help spread the reach of that region's investable startups, and more. Integrating all the data collection and analysis from our project, we conducted a strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats analysis. Here's a preview of each item. So we'll start with the top left with strengths. The strengths focus on Arizona's institutional leadership, research specializations, emerging industry clusters, competitive growth rates, strong educational pipeline and business environment. Moving on to weaknesses, which do focus on some noted ecosystem fragmentation, awareness internally and externally of the bioscience ecosystem, gaps in education spending and K-12 outcomes, regional research infrastructure, policy support, some challenges with workforce attraction, retention, and bioscience commercialization resources. Moving to the bottom left, the opportunities focus on greater collaboration, strategic partnership building, and truly the pursuit to solve critical health challenges and drive innovation, commercialization, investment, and ultimately growth. And lastly, threats, which focus a lot on the shifting policy and funding priority environment, some of those trends that Christy talked to earlier, but also statewide, national and international competition for workforce investment from, again, other regions and industries. In summary, the bioscience ecosystem here, we feel, is at a pivotal moment, demonstrating nationally competitive growth, but also facing key challenges and threats that, if addressed strategically, as we hope to do in the next iteration of the roadmap, can position the state as a leader in the biosciences. Arizona's world-class universities, research institutions, health systems, large-scale workforce, network of conveners and support organizations, expanding entrepreneurship resources, really do provide a strong foundation for ecosystem competitiveness. And as talked through in the slides today, some of these gaps with ecosystem coordination, commercialization infrastructure, funding mechanisms, early education, talent attraction and retention do limit the state's ability to translate its strengths into a sustained competitive advantage. This all brings us to our last section, where we'll provide a sneak peek of the new roadmap that is being crafted to guide the ecosystem forward as a rising bioscience leader in this rapidly changing landscape. So thank you, everyone. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Christy.
Great, thanks, Dylan. Yep, as Dylan said, I'll just give a high-level overview of sort of where we're headed next. So go ahead to the next slide. So the strategy components, so the core roadmap strategy section will have a strategic framework built around vision and goals. This will be a bold aspiration for Arizona to become a top-tier national bioscience leader. An action and implementation plan, which will have clear coordinated steps at multiple levels. So it'll be very tangible in terms of implementation steps, as well as necessary resources and so forth that would be needed for those actionable strategies. It will also include a monitoring and evaluation plan, which will include metrics and milestones for tracking progress, much like you've heard today from TEConomy Partners in terms of how we're able to continue to monitor and understand the growth or even some of the challenges facing Arizona's bioscience ecosystem in the years ahead. Through the strategic positioning that Dylan had mentioned, you can go ahead to the next slide. We've isolated 5 core focus areas for the roadmap. I don't think any of these will be a surprise to you. The first is collaboration, addressing the fragmentation with cross-sector statewide partnerships and sector conveners. Translational research, so accelerating the time from discovery to market with better clinical, regulatory, and scale-up infrastructure. Startups, boosting early stage support with focused accelerators, capital access, and mentorship. Talent pipeline, obviously critical one, aligned education with evolving bioscience needs, strengthening retention as well as attraction of top-tier talent into the state. Visibility and advocacy as well, raising Arizona's profile nationally and communicating the sector's value to decision makers and the public. We look forward to continued engagement with you all on the roadmap in these last few months as we finish it up. We are so appreciative of all the time and effort that you have spent to be part of this effort so far. And as we finalize the roadmap, we'll continue to collaborate on its implementation, which will be sort of a key area for you all. You can feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional feedback or interest in the next steps. So we have our email address there. If there are specific questions that you would like to address to us either now or following, we'd be happy to respond to those. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that really exciting sneak peek into the coming biosciences roadmap. We do have just a couple minutes. If anybody has any questions, I don't see any in the chat. I do want to point out that the full report brochure, including notable achievements throughout 2024, will be available on the Flynn website, and that you, all the participants today will receive a survey link when the webinar ends. We'll also include it in the chat. So please do complete it. It's really crucial. You know, we talk about this biosciences roadmap, and it's not something that SRI belongs to SRI. It's not something that belongs to Flynn. It's something that belongs to all of us. So it's really important that it reflect your interests and your ability to actually implement it. So I see that we've got those survey links showing up right now in the chat, and I really encourage you to fill that out. I guess in our last 5 minutes, I'm seeing a bunch of thank yous to you all for all your work, and would like to send the thank out to all the participants who have been involved in all your surveys. Maybe, Christy and Dylan, you could maybe tell us a little bit about how you've engaged people? And are there any further opportunities to provide input?
Sure. Yeah, we have had extensive engagement with many folks who are here. We did one-on-one interviews. We had extensive focus groups regionally in particular. So between Tucson and Flagstaff and Phoenix, we had a great opportunity to speak with folks. The survey, of course, which many of you responded to, as well as additional engagements with industry. So we've gotten some great input. We feel very confident that we have heard from all corners of the ecosystem. But if you have not had a chance to engage directly in the roadmap, we are certainly open to having additional conversations and hearing your perspective, because that's the most important component of all of this is making sure that you all have ownership over the roadmap, because when it comes time for implementation, you'll be critical partners as well. So yeah, love to hear from you.
Perfect. All right. So also there's a question about, will we have access to the recording of the session? Yes. And again, that magic URL, flynn.org/progress. We'll have both the slides up there and recording. So yes, I think if we have a chance, since we don't seem to have any other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. If you put a question in the chat that we didn't get to, we will follow up. We promise that. It's really great. That's the one really good thing about Zoom, is that we have an opportunity to kind of have this running commentary in the chat. And so questions we didn't have a chance to get to, we will follow up with. So with that, I think we'll thank everybody again. Thank you, SRI. Thank you, Flynn Foundation. And we look forward to talking again soon.